I'm hearing one message loud and clear as the elite media rise up and cry out in unison. We're not going to shut up. The free press is important. We have a mission to hold President Trump accountable. And the reason for this somewhat defensive tone is that Steve Bannon, the former chairman of Breitbart, now the senior strategist in the Trump White House, gave a rare interview to the New York Times in which he let on to the rest of the world what's really an open secret in Washington, which is that he does not like the press. There are a lot of people out there who don't like the press, and there are a lot of people in the Trump White House who don't have much use for the press. But these quotes from Steve Bannon are fascinating and revealing, and so is the reaction from the media. So, for example, this is in an interview with the New York Times. Steve Bannon says the elite media got it dead wrong, 100% wrong, talking about the election. A humiliating defeat that they will never wash away. They'll always be there. Well, it was humiliating to watch 18 months of the media establishment saying Donald Trump was going nowhere, he wouldn't make it to Iowa, he wasn't going to win the nomination, and of course he wasn't going to win the election. And that has really stuck with people on the Trump team. Well, then Bannon goes on to say the media, mainstream media, haven't fired or terminated anyone for this behavior. That is true. Being a pundit means never having to say you're sorry or lose your job if you're wrong on war, peace, trade, politics, or just about anything else. And then Bannon also talks about the Twitter feed of journalists, some of whom are pretty snarky when they're kind of talking to their peers about Trump and his administration. But then comes the killer, which is you are the opposition party. He believes that the press is the opposition party and should, for at least a while, shut up and listen. All right, well, I wouldn't quite agree that we're the opposition party, but I can understand why folks in the Trump administration might feel that way. The tone toward Donald Trump, particularly in the general election, and again during the transition, and even more so during his first week in office, has been pretty relentlessly negative. And if he does things that he said he was going to do in the campaign, it'll be covered, but doesn't get much attention, and there isn't much credit being given. Opposition party suggests that, we all go to meetings and there's a convention and we take a blood oath, and that's not true. It's a lot more disorganized than that. And we should never be seen as the opposition party. We should hold every president to the same standard, obviously a little different right now in the case of Barack Obama. As far as the shut up part, I think that Bannon was baiting us, and I think that many journalists kind of took the bait. He doesn't expect us to shut up. The guy ran a news website. I think what he's really saying when he says shut up and listen is, you ought to spend some time reflecting on what you got wrong about this campaign and about the Trump candidacy, and listen to people out there, the millions of Americans who voted for Donald Trump, who made him president, who are angry and frustrated over economic anxiety and jobs and a feeling of being disrespected. And some journalists have admitted this. We did a lousy job of that. We were too insular in the media bubbles, particularly in New York and Washington. We didn't understand a lot of this anger and frustration that actually propelled Bernie Sanders as well as Donald Trump. And we could do a better job of listening to the heartland of the country. Nobody's expecting people like me and people in this business to shut up. But I think that rather than just, punch back at what Steve Bannon said, maybe a little self-reflection is in order, and maybe while continuing to do our jobs and while continuing to hold the 45th president accountable, we ought to think a little harder about why it is that some people perceive us now as being in the opposition.